The Baltimore Ravens bully the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football and prove that the Chargers just aren't quite there yet. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. Make sure that you listen to every episode of Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every Tuesday, by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to pick a new home for Daniel Jones, talk about who we think will win the NFC West, but we'll start with this Monday Night Football matchup. Before we dive in, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the second half of the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lauren, the Baltimore Ravens keep on rolling and prove once again that they're one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think on the other side of the coin, the Chargers' first year under Jim Harbaugh, they still got some room to go.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And we'll throw it to my guy, Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens, breaking down the big Monday Night Football win.
The Baltimore Ravens defeat the Los Angeles Chargers 30-23 on Monday Night Football. I'm Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. Baltimore gets the job done, a huge bounce-back win against an AFC opponent and a team that they might be facing off in the wild card race if they can't secure the AFC North. And Baltimore takes advantage of a Pittsburgh loss on Thursday night and climbs back into the AFC North race. Lamar Jackson does his thing with a couple of big touchdown passes, one to Rashad Bateman, one to Mark Andrews. Derrick Henry runs wild, and that defense minus Roquan Smith, some shaky moments, but overall held up very, very well. Baltimore needed this game, and now they go and face the Philadelphia Eagles back at home in a Week 13 showdown. And for more on the Ravens and this big win, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Listen, I think you look at the Ravens in this, they handled their business against a team that they're better than. Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 140 yards. Like that, again, they bullied the Los Angeles Chargers in this game. They were the more physical team. I do say this, though. I do worry a little bit with Baltimore. I'm very curious to see them go up against Philly, another team that can match their physicality. Because in this game, Baltimore just kind of lived off some big plays. They made a few big plays down the field. It wasn't a super clean game. Lamar Jackson didn't have his best game ever. And I guess I know that, I could be construed as a Ravens hater or whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, I just don't know that I believe in this Baltimore Ravens team on a big stage when they aren't playing teams that they're clearly better than.
Yeah, I mean, 9 penalties for 102 yards doesn't exactly scream tight contest there from Baltimore. Right. But no, I agree. I think they've got the talent right now where you just feel like this is a battle-tested veteran team with a lot of experienced players on both sides of the ball. That you just kind of know when push comes to shove, they're going to make the play when you need to. But it's just, okay, that's great. That'll get you far. But we're still waiting for those answers like in the AFC Championship game when they really have the biggest stage. But for now, they're sitting just fine.
And I guess this goes back to when we saw Baltimore beat Buffalo. I came on the show and I said, show me in the playoffs. Like, we know what Lamar Jackson could do. We know how exciting he's going to be. Derrick Henry's a great player, but Baltimore's just one of those teams where it's like, there's not really much they can do in the regular season to wow me, and maybe that's not fair, but they've been this team for so long. We've seen them be so consistent. I think I saw a stat after the game from Joe Buck that Lamar Jackson is 18-4 after losses. Like, he's just so consistent. He's such a winner. Credit for that. But at the same time, because of that consistency, I'm like, we know who you are. All that really matters is, can you finally get it done in the playoffs? So whether it's fair or not, I don't really care because life isn't fair. Do it in the playoffs, Ravens. I'm not throwing a parade for you now.
Well, at least they're finding different ways to win, get different guys involved, right? I mean, Lamar Jackson doesn't have to have a dominant game performance to have a pretty smooth day overall against the Chargers. You can let Derrick Henry go, and then Mark Andrews will make a nice catch in the end zone for a touchdown, and he doesn't have to be Superman all game.
Yeah, and I think some of the guys on the outside made plays for him too. Bateman makes a big catch. Zay Flowers showed up. Like they have the pieces that they need. And they showed on the broadcast on Monday Night Football. They're averaging over 7 yards per play, which right now would be an NFL record. So when we get to the playoffs, I don't want to hear about Todd Monken not being good enough and blah, 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 blah. And it's everybody else's fault but Lamar Jackson. Like they have what they need here. So let's see it in the playoffs. Again, not fair. Don't care. But I do want to talk about the Chargers for a minute because I think, Lauren, you said it, early in the show, and I fully agree. And it's something that we talked about coming on to the show. The Chargers are a well-coached football team, and you can clearly see that they're a better football team than they were under Brandon Staley, and they have a better direction. But this team was picking in the top 5 of the draft for a reason. This roster just does not have enough talent to compete with the big boys, and especially a playmaker on the outside. Like, they have gotten the best out of Quentin Johnston, in my opinion, but he's still not good enough for and the fact they picked him 1 pick ahead of Zay Flowers is, that's nightmare fuel for Chargers fans. But they're a couple pieces away. Some of their big pieces on defense are a little older now, like a Derwin James, a Joey Bosa, a Khalil Mack, who's been injured a lot this year. The Chargers are on the right path, in my opinion, but they need more talent on their roster before they're ready to compete with a team like the Ravens.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like they should, like they're not a disappointment even.
Right.
That, you know what I mean?
Correct.
Like this feels maybe even still exceeding expectations of where we thought year one of Harbaugh, okay, he'd come in, he'd steady the ship a little bit, but I don't think anybody thought he would come in, win 12 games and be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and certainly not in the Chiefs division. So it's like, it feels like criticism to say, they just aren't good enough, but like they are still playing well and are exceeding expectations there. It just feels like, when your leading receivers are McConkey and Palmer on the outside there, and it just is a decent tight end, but like, it's all like not quite that like next level talent to really lift Justin Herbert and put him over the top there.
100%. And when you look at a team like the Ravens, and then you look at Sunday Night Football with a team like the Eagles, it just makes it blatantly obvious that like they have a lot of good things going for them, but they're not on that level quite yet. They play Atlanta next week in Atlanta off a bye. Then they're at Kansas City, Tampa Bay at home, Denver at home. They finish with New England and Vegas. Those should be wins. So they're still going to be a playoff team. They could probably still surprise somebody in the playoffs maybe, but I think I agree with you. Although I'm saying they're not quite there yet, I think this is an encouraging year for Chargers fans, and they should feel very excited about where Jim Harbaugh can take the team going forward. But with that being said, since we're in the West with the Chargers, we need to look at the West in the NFC, where all of these teams are bundled up, and who the heck is going to win this division? We'll make our picks. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Skylight Frames. Folks, the holiday season is here, and sometimes it can be hard to know what you want to buy for somebody, especially like some people in your family are just hard to buy for. Maybe they live far away. Gift giving might not be your love language. You can overthink it. You can wind up with something disappointing or nothing at all, for that matter. But I've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is a touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. Seamless sharing. You can invite your friends and family so they can share photos to the Skylight Frame as well, all on the Skylight mobile app. It's literally that easy. Much better than social media because it's a private way that you can share photos with your family and your loved ones. It is a perfect gift. So right now, as a special limited time offer for my listeners, Get $20 off your purchase of the Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. Get $20 off the Skylight Frame at skylightframe.com/NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL fans, you need to get ready to tackle the second half of the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We recapped the Monday Night Football matchup that was pretty entertaining overall between two teams that are pretty good football teams. But now we need to look at a division that I don't know if any of the teams are good football teams, quite frankly, and it's the NFC West. We saw the Seattle Seahawks beat the Arizona Cardinals this weekend and take the lead in that division. And my guys over at the Locked On Seahawks podcast think that puts the Seahawks squarely in the driver's seat for the NFC West.
With the Seahawks now being back above 500, they have the tiebreaker over the Cardinals, so they jump into first place. Looking at where things stand right now, heading into Week 13, Rob, do you think that it is, a warranted take to say that this Seahawks team now is in the driver's seat in this division, or is it still, like most elections, too close to call?
I thought that this was the Seahawks' most impressive victory so far this season. I thought that it was even more impressive than what they did against the San Francisco 49ers and, any other matchup again this week, because the caliber of the opponent, because of everything that was on the line, and because Seattle had struggled so much against run defense and was so good in this particular matchup, basically made the Arizona Cardinals completely one-dimensional. That's why they won this game. So, again, I think that they absolutely are in the driver's seat moving forward in the NFC West division.
Lauren, I'm going to say it. I don't agree, Corbin and Rob from Locked On Seahawks. I understand they just won the game against the Cardinals. This may sound crazy, but I think the Cardinals are still the favorites in the NFC West. And a lot of it for me comes down to schedule and division record. The Seahawks are 2-2 in the division. The Cardinals are still 2-1. The Rams are 2-1. San Francisco is 1-3. I'm not picking them, but I think Arizona is still in the catbird seat in the division, even though they just lost to Seattle this weekend.
I see you on the schedule front because what they got, the Patriots and the Panthers in there, and then basically a bunch of other divisional games there. But I also feel myself feeling I can't trust this Cardinals team, that they have so much of a Jekyll and Hyde mentality here that sometimes they'll come out great and light up a team like the Chicago Bears or the New York Jets in back-to-back weeks, and then they'll come out really flat against Seattle and play a really bad game. They did the same thing against the Packers earlier this year. That I just don't know that week in and week out I'm getting enough consistency from them. Whereas I feel like at least with Seattle they've had some more proven sort of playmaking there. That like we've seen Geno Smith win more football games, take teams to a postseason like this, and be a guy who leads the NFL in passing entering Monday Night Football. I think Lamar passed him in this game, and I still don't think Seattle's schedule is all that terrible because they got a bad Jets team on there, and then they got a bunch of divisional games. The Cardinals, again, who they just beat, and then the Bears are in there as well. Should be a winnable one for them too. So I still lean Seattle, but I think it's, as Corbin said, it's still a toss-up. It's division either way.
100%. To go through the schedules real quick, I'm going to leave San Francisco out of this. I simply don't believe in San Francisco at this point in time. But
coming up this week.
Yeah, they play the Bills in Buffalo this week, and that, it's going to be ugly. But Seattle goes at Jets, at Cardinals. Cardinals can get that get back at home pretty quickly. Then They're home for the Packers and the Vikings, though. That's pretty tough. Then they're at the Bears, at the Rams to finish. That's a pretty tough schedule for Seattle to finish. And then you look at Arizona, they're at Minnesota this week, though. That's a tough game. Obviously, I don't see them winning. Back home to rematch with Seattle, but then they're home for New England, at Carolina, which may be a tougher game than we think, just the way the Carolina Panthers played this week. At the Rams, finish with San Francisco. I guess it's not a cakewalk, but you're right. There are a couple easy games. And then finally, the Rams are at New Orleans, home for Buffalo, at San Francisco, at the Jets, Arizona, and then Seattle at home to finish. I don't know. It's tough. I honestly think that the Rams and the Cardinals are the two teams that I would rank at the top. And my guy, Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals, kind of explained why it wasn't as bad as it looked for the Cardinals this weekend.
I still don't think it was as bad as it looked. And the reason for that is they moved the ball between the 20s pretty well for a good chunk of this game. And then it just kind of sputtered. It was a fourth down debacle. Didn't convert. The pick six was really bad at like the worst time. The Cardinals were in this game for pretty much the entirety of the game. It was a one-score game before Seattle kicked the field goal with 3 minutes left. Like, this was not a Washington Commanders just throttling of the Cardinals. This wasn't an absolute blowout. This wasn't an embarrassment like Green Bay. Okay? It wasn't. They didn't play well on offense, but it wasn't an embarrassment. Seattle was juiced up at home against one of the tougher places to play in football. And it's not an excuse. It's a reason.
So I'm kind of with my guy, Alex Clancy there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I certainly get it, but it's part of that Jekyll and Hyde stuff there, right? Where it's like they're bound for that sort of thing any given week.
The wild cards.
You got Minnesota and then 3 more divisional games after that. Like, can I trust them in all of those games to stay ahead? I mean, I think at the very least, all 4 of these teams all play each other still left in the season. Then there's like the Rams have 3 more at the end of the year. I think the Cardinals have 3 more. Like, there's going to be a lot to shake out between these teams, and we'll know pretty well who belongs above the rest because they'll go head to head to show it.
Quite honestly, with the way that the playoff picture is shaping up, this is one of the more interesting storylines to follow down the stretch. Like, a lot of things kind of look like the AFC wild card and the NFC wild card seem kind of locked in play. So some of these divisions like the NFC South or like the NFC West, like this is the real areas of excitement that we're going to live off of here for the next couple of weeks.
And, you wrote them off a little bit early on, but I still can't help but I can't let go of the 49ers thing. Just like Buffalo's going to be a mess this week, probably. And then they're 5-7 and it's a tough stretch there. But if they just get healthy, beat the Bears, Rams, Dolphins out of the Lions in the second to last game of the season, that's going to be tough. But any team could make a miracle run to win that division. It's this 49ers team. If they just get healthy enough, or maybe if they get another quarterback in there with Brock Purdy being injured, could that unlock what they're missing on offense?
Could they be adding a new quarterback? Lauren with a professional segue. Daniel Jones, anybody? It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic. Look, all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced. You can start whenever, you can tune in wherever, plus you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or of course, just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it is easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. A true professional segue from Lauren Cox right there, everybody, getting us ready to go for this Daniel Jones conversation. Before we dive in, do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Make sure that you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with my guy, Tony Wiggins, who had to eat some crow on yesterday's episode, trying to poo-poo my Titans upset pick for the weekend. Well, Tony, there you go. But all jokes aside here, great stuff over there on the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But Daniel Jones is on the market. And our guys over at the Locked On 49ers podcast think he might be a pretty good option for them right now.
Does it make you want to go out there and sign Daniel Jones even more just to see what he might have for you?
Yeah, because you get him on like a what's his name, Russell Wilson type contract.
It would make total sense for Daniel Jones, and I've had some pushback because people say Daniel Jones is trash. Well, I think Daniel Jones a very good chance in a couple of weeks he'd be at least as good or better than what we saw from Brandon Allen out there, right?
So that's the thing, right? It goes back to what I said about the Purdy thing earlier. What are we comparing them to? So if you're saying Daniel Jones is making $40 million a year, which he was in New York, and you're not getting $40 million results, then I understand saying he's trash. But if you're saying, I just need Daniel Jones to be better than Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs, I do think he is better suited to start for the 49ers in the absence of Brock Purdy.
So we did get a report on Monday that Brock Purdy threw and it went well. Like I know, Lauren, that sometimes these reports come out and they're just meant to inspire confidence in the team. Like they just got shellacked, so maybe the locker room is down. Hey, guys, don't worry. Brock feels good, like he's coming back. Keep your heads up, stuff like that. We know that ownership cares about the fan base. That's just how these owners work. They are way less rational than people give them credit for. At the end of the day, they really do care about how the fans feel and stuff like that. But outside of all that, I think that Daniel Jones does make the most sense for the 49ers. I mean, I wrote down a couple of other teams. Dallas, he wants to play for a contender, he said. He already said he didn't want to go to Vegas when that would be a great fit with Gardner Minshew out for the year. He doesn't want to go there. The Commanders, maybe a backup to Jaden Daniels. He's had a rib injury. The Vikings, that's just a place where quarterbacks go to revive their career, I guess, after Sam Darnold now. The Dolphins, Tua's checkered past with concussions. If he were to get hurt, which seems more likely, do any of these teams stand out? And do any of these teams make more sense than San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by Daniel Jones's I want to go to a contender comment.
Right.
Because he's 27 years old, not a 37-year-old who's got one last ride. Like, this is not your Super Bowl window, bud. Like, I get, you want to go to a good team so that you can play well and get a good contract. Doesn't want to go play for the Carolina Panthers or whatever, although they're playing well too. But so, if I'm Daniel Jones, the thing about San Francisco is, yes, Brock Purdy's hurt right now, but if Daniel Jones signs there today, is he ready to play Sunday, or does he need a couple weeks to get up to speed? And by the time he's up to speed, Brock Purdy will be healthy and ready to go. So I think it's a little bit less about team's quarterback health right this minute. And that's why I still feel like Miami's not a bad spot for him there. I mean, just given the volatility of Tua, just it's not his fault, but just his inability to consistently stay healthy, to plug into that offense, learn under Mike McDaniel for a couple weeks. And then if Tua gets hurt, you're throwing to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. That seems like a pretty good spot to be. Whereas, San Francisco has injuries on the offensive line right now with Trent Williams. So their protection for Brandon Allen wasn't great there. Certainly the Cowboys have a ton of injuries up front. That doesn't feel like a great spot for him either. But his objective should be to get on the field and have a chance to prove what he can do, not get me on a team where I can win a ring as a backup.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I think outside of what Daniel Jones has said, that he wants to play for a contender and all these reports about that, the Raiders would be clearly the best option, because he could go in right away and be the starter. And that would actually give him a chance to at least audition to be their starter maybe next year, because they don't have a great plan at quarterback. I know that they're rumored to be very interested in Shedeur Sanders. Great, but is that going to be possible? You can't bank on things like that in the NFL. So I think the Raiders would actually make the most sense just in a vacuum for Daniel Jones. But is it actually better for him and his contract to not play? Like, would it be better to hide yourself and maybe allow people to continue to think, oh, it's just the Giants' disaster of an organization, disaster situation, they mistreated him? Is it better for his contract going forward to actually be just a backup and not be on the field? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I agree with that, but is that at least a possibility he's considering?
Yeah, like to play the long game there. Like if Daniel Jones goes, I mean, even if he goes to San Francisco or Miami or Minnesota and finds his way on the field, like he's only going to have been there 2 or 3 weeks. Is he going to be a much better quarterback there than he was in New York? Like, would he be better off? Pick a team that you could see maybe a little bit of a longer term future with. Sign a 2-year deal with San Francisco or Miami or whatever, and so that you can be the backup, learn the system, and then when you do actually go into the game, maybe next year you get back on the field. You're not going in as a kid who's just trying to learn a playbook on the fly. Like, you've been there, you can soak it in a little bit and say, here's how much better I am now that I'm in this new organization, not just fly by night, get to a new team and try and do the same thing again and maybe make some of the same mistakes.
That's why I think you pinpointing Miami and kind of nailing down on Miami in this conversation is so good, because fair or not, I guess that's the theme of the episode, Tua is one hit away from his career maybe being over. And I think that Daniel Jones's ability to run the football could be enticing to a guy like Mike McDaniel. So even if he doesn't play over Tua this year and he stays with Miami next year, that could be a really good fit for him and a really good, like, risk versus reward situation. So Miami is an interesting one. I like that you kind of hammered down on that, because thinking about long-term and short-term, that could be the best option.
Did you mention Baltimore at all as an option there?
No, I did not. As a backup for Lamar Jackson, that would be interesting. And look, Daniel Jones is no Lamar Jackson, but he can run the football, so he could run some of the similar stuff.
And I don't think Lamar Jackson has played every game in a season of his career. Last year he played 16, which was his most, but the year before that was 12, 15, 15. Like, every year you're going to get 1 or 2 games without Lamar Jackson. So if I'm Daniel Jones, getting an offense with Derrick Henry I can turn off and hand the ball to, the weapons there are slowly getting better, the O-line's decent enough, you got a defense on their side, like, that wouldn't be a bad spot for me either, to just take a few years to kind of reset a little bit and hope to hit it again like a Geno Smith down the line.
100%. And you know that the Ravens are a great organization. So it's going to be, the polar opposite of kind of what he was dealing with in New York for most of his career. Might be good to kind of reset and just get good vibes and be on a team that plays well and feel wins and learn from a good organization about how things are done properly. That might be a good avenue as well.
And that's why he's not going to Dallas, right? Because it's the exact
100%. And with that in mind, like, I think I saw a report that said he's not going to go to Philadelphia, but backing up Jalen Hurts, staying in the division, maybe playing in a game at the end of the season when the Eagles are kind of resting guys. There are things there.
Reunite with Saquon Barkley, just get the band back together. It make it more comfortable for him. He just would have that familiarity there. That would make a lot of sense too. But hey, 100%. They love Kenny Pickett, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. But with that being said, we got a Kenny Pickett mention on the show today. That's how I know it's time for us to go. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. On tomorrow's episode with the Brain Luke Braun, I think we're going to talk about some of these young quarterbacks and how they've been playing over the last few weeks. But for me, the madman, Tyler Rowland, and my esteemed co-host with the best segues in the business, Lauren Cox. That's going to do it for us today. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. Check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL as well. And as I always tell you guys when I end these episodes, stay safe out there.